Hello, this is Rich Mogul, and welcome to the Securosys Firestarter. This one is, we're recording on January 16th, and I'm not going to do the math to figure out when it's going to go out the door. Depends on editing, you know? Blame the editors for it.
Blame editors.
Yep, all right. Well, as you heard, that is Mike Rothman. Mike, how's it going?
Good. Happy New Year, everybody.
How,
Holy
how
crap, it's 2015. How the that happen?
and how are we still here? So, how many time zones this week for you, or this year so far?
Oh, just one trip. One trip. So I'm doing a little different thing this year. You know, last year was absolutely, totally bonkers. So I'm actually trying to be in the office on Thursdays and Fridays. I've got it scheduled out through February. We'll see, right? I'm cautiously optimistic. Cautiously optimistic. And no, that doesn't mean I'll be leaving RSA on Wednesday afternoon. I will be there the entire week. That I will, kind of take a little bit of a respite from my plan. But we'll see. You know, people have been pretty accommodating thus far, so hopefully that'll continue to be the case.
Nice. And how about you, Adrian? You've already been out the door as well.
Yeah, I was in the same time zone as Mike and didn't get a chance to see him because we were both so busy. I mean, I haven't seen you guys. It's 15 days, 16 days into the month, and I haven't seen you since when? Before Christmas? So it's, it's already going gangbusters. We're already traveling, already seeing clients, and when I'm not seeing clients, I'm being terrorized by a tiny, tiny little Boston Terrier flying around the house. I think he's part flying squirrel because he's able to jump on
FNG. It's FNG.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I've just been home. It was amusing this morning. My daughter came and she's like, "Daddy, I want to see a video of you on the internet." Oh, okay. So I pulled up a Firestarter. She saw the pictures back there. Those are our pictures. Yes. People see them. Yes. Oh, and she got all excited. That means we're famous. No. I'm having to try to explain what internet famous means, which is yeah, that's good. So no, good year here as well. I haven't actually traveled at all, which is nice. Got my wife and I are running a half marathon this weekend, and if all goes well, I might try and do a full in April. But the travel's starting to roll in already after this, so we'll see how long the training plan lasts.
This weekend. Nice.
Yeah, just the one local one, the Phoenix, it's the PF Chang's Rock and Roll Marathon and Half Marathon.
Oh yeah, rock and roll's fun. They have like bands with shitty music, kind of playing while you're running.
Every mile there's a band.
Yeah, so you can turn up your iTunes or whatever you run with, and it'll be good.
Rocket skates. You need rocket skates.
It's a good race. It's fun. And they got bands at the end. Who do they have? They've got OK Go and the Wallflowers playing at the finish this year. So it should be good. Got babysitters. And
that'll be great.
yeah, have fun, and I'm actually in better shape than I've been in a long time, so should set a PR, which will be nice, as long as I don't get hurt. But let's go to the news, and speaking of getting hurt, Microsoft's feelings were hurt by Google.
Yes.
What was it, just last week or something like that, or the week before, Google dropped a couple of 0 days, so they have their 0-day project, or day zero, I can't remember the name of the actual group. Google security researchers, they have a hard 90-day deadline no matter what, they drop the 0 days. So if they find a code, they will report the vulnerability to the vendor no matter what. So the last one, so it was whatever Patch Tuesday was, I think that was this week or last week, they went ahead and dropped it 2 days before Patch Tuesday. Even though Microsoft said, hey, the patches are going out, we do this, or that's the way stuff's scheduled. Google said, okay, and they dropped it anyway. Yeah, this time just 90 days hits and it goes out of their system. Now there's some amusing
their system. So they have a system to do this.
I don't know. I didn't look in. I think they put it into their automated stuff, and I think it just pops out the other end. It's not like somebody has to remember to put it out the door, is my guess. But that said, it's kind of annoying. It's like two major vendors pissing at each other. Now Google just released 2 more today. As well, because it hit that 90-day deadline from when they reported it. I have not seen them once release a Google vulnerability for some strange reason. And as a matter of fact, there's a major Android vulnerability that Google has said they're not going to patch, going back because they think everybody should just migrate to new versions of Android, except carriers don't let users do that. I mean, I don't know. My first response is grow the fuck up. Like,
yes,
users first.
Yes. It honestly, it sounds like I'm dealing with a toddler. right? And it's a little disoriented, to be honest with you, because my kids aren't toddlers anymore. So I can actually have conversations with them, and they have sort of rational responses. I mean, listen, rational for an 11-year-old is different than rational for a 25-year-old is different from rational from a 45-year-old, right? But, these sounds like 3 years old. We have our rules, and we can't deviate from our rules. It's a
Our
day.
arbitrary rules.
Right, it's a day.
Arbitrary rules.
Right, it's a day, and there are 60 million people that will update their stuff on the day, right? If you don't do it on the day after, then that's fine. That's fair game, but it's a day, right? And then the thing that chaps me is, well, we're just not going to patch this thing. Yeah, with the Android vulnerability, we're just not going to patch it. No, screw you. Right? It sounds a lot like they've become, the oracle of vulnerability disclosure, right? Or vulnerability patching and that kind of thing. Whereas you know what? Screw you. You never take your database down anyway, so why would we issue any patches? Well, you just update to the latest version of the device, so we don't need to patch the old crap. That's not how it happens in the real world, sports fans. And once Oracle got their hands on Java, they kind of realized that, holy crap, this is a totally different ball game when you've got millions of people using your crap and you have a vulnerability that allows the phone to be rooted, at any given time. But some folks won't, they won't learn until they need to learn. And the problem with Google's model is, since you really don't pay for much of it, folks tend not to care and they just continue to do their thing.
It's just process. It's just a serving suggestion, just guideposts. They could have modified that if they'd cared to. I mean, especially when you're considering the number of vendors or the number of customers who are potentially affected by the vulnerability. Thinking moving the disclosure out 2 days wouldn't have cost them anything. So it sounds like a pissing match.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they think that, all right, we're going to set this arbitrary deadline. We've decided 90 days is enough to patch almost anything, which it's not. I mean, some patches you can do in a day. Other things, it may take longer than 90 days. Basically, they're saying that our researchers are going to dictate the priorities. And that's one problem I've always had with aspects of full disclosure. I think full disclosure is very important. I think you need it. I think there are vendors who are unresponsive. I think there are many vendors who don't do the right thing, who aren't going to put their customers first. In those cases, you need to go ahead and release those vulnerabilities at a certain point, basically, because that's the only way, people can know that they're at risk, and even though it increases the risk for some people, but it will also, basically gives those vendors the motivation. They can't drag stuff out forever. But when a vendor is acting in good faith, just to say, we're going to do 90 days no matter what, and we're not going to make it, we're not going to deviate by 2 days, we're not going to deviate by a week or whatever, we're just going to push that stuff out the door because we've decided that's enough time, and that's coming from a company that can't even get their own shit together. That bothers me. It shows a lack of maturity. It shows a lack of organization, and it's not putting the users first. I'm not one of those people that says don't do vulnerability research. I'm a huge fan of it. I'm not one of those people that says we shouldn't have full disclosure. We should have it. It has a very important role to play. But when you start just building your own arbitrary rule sets and forcing everybody else to fit into it, that's bad. That's what got Microsoft in trouble, many times, because they were building arbitrary rules about how they worked with developers and their timelines. Apple's dealt with those issues, is still dealing with some of the fallout from their poor decisions in working with vulnerability researchers, and now we've got Google stepping in their own way. And, it's
about being flexible, right? When, again, I'll get back to the toddler analogy, right? When you're 3, there's a way to do things, and you haven't experienced enough in your life to know that maybe there's another way to do things. When you're 11, maybe there are a couple of different alternative ways, but you know what? Your parents told you something, so you're going to tell them to screw off anyway. Right? We're not going to do it that way because you want it. And that gets a lot worse when the kids get a little bit older, as we're learning with our 14-year-old right now. When you're 25, you think you're right. So, yeah, you'll hear all this other stuff, but you know what? I have lots of life experience, so I know I'm right. Then when you're 45, you realize you don't know anything, right? You just don't know anything. So you just basically go, hey, that sounds okay. I can be flexible, because you realize you just don't know anything. So, you have much less of a fixed view of the world, once you realize how much you don't know. But it just, and again, I think some of these actions really reflect a toddler on Google's part. Others, kind of that 25-year-old, which is, I have plenty of experience doing this. I know everything. This is the way it's going to be.
Would Google say that you could just make it patch Sunday instead of patch Tuesday? That you could just simply push it a couple days earlier? I mean, if you're going
Well,
to play devil's advocate on this, I mean,
absolutely. I mean, the fact of the matter is Microsoft could have. They've done out of cycle patches before. I just think that there's a level of being just a human, right? A good human, somebody who will have a conversation with you and say, all right, it's a day, right? As opposed to, having a fixed thing because of the costs involved or whatever. I mean, it's not Google's problem, but
Well, no, it's not even the cost. I mean, they have that day because they've decided that if they have that 90-day window, it will always force people to patch within that 90-day window, and it won't because there's so many other business considerations.
Right. I just don't like something that's so inflexible that it can't be moved for anything. Right, and that's and again, I think so. I read something that I forgot where that it'll be funny if Microsoft starts turning some of their researchers onto all the Google stuff, and then you have an arms race, which for me is I think it'll be funny, right? Because then you know what, Google, here's a little bit of taste of your own medicine. Here's a huge problem in Gmail. Oh crap, right? I mean, it's not like these apps can't be broken. It's not like they're on hundreds of millions of people using them like with Microsoft stuff. So, again, it just gets back to playing a very dangerous game over time. And if you don't show any, kind of means to work with folks out there, they're not going to show any means to work with you. And that gets back to the whole adage that, karma is a bitch. And it seems that Google is extinguishing a tremendous amount of theirs right now.
Well, and they're also acting. I mean, one of the reasons Google can get away with some of this, and look, they used to have a really bad record. They cleaned up a lot. They've got great internal security team these days. The Google web apps, for the most part, I think there's very little they couldn't fix internally within the 90-day window. Anytime they put something into a customer's hands, so when they release that code, so it's Android and browsers and but especially Android. Now they've got they own Nest, they own all these other things. They're going to have to probably they'll be facing the same issues that Microsoft does because when you actually have to deploy those updates out, and Google's got a great answer for that now. It's screw them. We can't do it. We don't have a good way to get that stuff updated. We didn't have the carriers, we got no agreements there, so they can't update it. If you install this one little Google App Store, or not, like they've got basically their own little container now for older versions of Android. Well, we can update everything inside of that, but no, not the devices because we didn't really plan for that. So you got to be on one of the latest 2 versions, which was only like 15% of the Android users. I'm like, yeah. So when you're in their situation, you can't do it. Now, part of this is Google is massive. It's not like their coordination. I think the tweet I put out for this was, oh gee, what a shock. Google product management doesn't want to hit the arbitrary standards set by Google security researchers, and we've never seen anything like that happen before. And I think it's just going to continue. So I think Microsoft should throw the researchers on there, man. Get dirty. I got no problem with that. All right, we're coming into an election cycle. We're going to see all those crappy advertisements on the air where people are kicking everybody in the nuts. Might as well have it happen between our big tech giants, since clearly one of them wants to play that game. So go for it and focus on the stuff that Google can't just fix with updating some web code. Let's see what starts happening. I'm okay with that, except for the fact that still doesn't put the users first, which is really what this is about.
Yes.
Let's keep people safe. And,
yes.
and all these games. Space Rogue, formerly from the Loft and at Stake, he had a great post. I linked to it. I think it was my post of the week or something on the Insider, the Friday summary, where it basically came down to just ask yourself the question: what's best for the user? Sometimes it's full disclosure. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's waiting 2 days. Sometimes it's not. But that's really the best approach, and that's not what's going on. That's not what these companies are doing, and in particular Google right now. And it's too bad because they've got that zero-day project is a great idea. They've got some incredible researchers over there.
Yep.
I think they just need to get over it.
Yep.
All right, we killed that one.
Killed that one.
I got nothing else.
No reason to belabor this. So hopefully next week, people, we've got some ideas for some, kind of what we think the hot button issues are coming up. Don't forget, RSA time is getting ever closer. We're going to be doing the disaster recovery breakfast, and you're going to see some changes on our site as well. We're actually starting a probably a month or so long project to kind of, we realized we actually have a ton of papers now. We've been writing papers for 8 years and doing videos and podcasts and all those kinds of things. So we're kind of reorganizing the research library, which we know is a piece of garbage right now. But
That's
And if
being
you register
kind.
for the site, and you don't get an email, nobody else does either.
right.
You'll still get the daily digest. So I know a bunch of you guys complain about that. I didn't get a
That's not where they
response.
register. Anyway, yeah, and we got to pull that link off.
No,
Just go to
yeah,
site
that's a piece of
registration.
garbage too, but it basically works. So we'll be trying to fix the research library and make it a little bit easier to digest.
Yeah, I think this current version of the site is what, 6, 7 years old. Most of the code running.
It predates me.
Yeah, I can't remember when you joined
So,
anyway. I
yeah.
don't know. But
Forever minus 1 day.
forever minus 1 day.
Forever
Anyway,
plus 1 day is the day I get fired.
we're boring you guys with that stuff. So I still like our design though. But yeah, we got those other things getting cleaned up, and it's gonna be a good year. So man, already off to a great start. I mean, good year for us. Really crappy for society at large because of all the breaches and stuff. But that's the nature of the business we're in. And that's it. Any closing remarks, guys? Otherwise, we'll kill it. Have a good one.
Ah.